Thank you very much. I love this space here, it's amazing. So I will speak to you about the Eternal Internet Brotherhood, which started almost as a joke in late 2011. The artist collective Lucky PDF were interviewing me for Dazed and Confused magazine and asked me what would be my dream project, to think about a dream project I would like to realize. So I started describing a gathering of internet artists, curators, writers, and friends on the ancient island of Delos. There we would make, my idea was to create the works on the spot, to do talks, to come together, to swim together, all together in this like place. When I was describing this to Lucky PDF, I realized that it was something I really wanted to do for a very long time. Luckily, when the interview got published, I got many requests from artists from different parts of the world that they were asking when this will happen and how they can participate. So that was difficult, but also, you know, that made me think about it, of realizing. So I live in Greece, and in the last 5 years we have this really terrible financial crisis. So it's really impossible to get any funding for projects, for any art project. So strangely though, I felt it felt a little bit liberating when you didn't have to get an approval from anybody. So I decided on the spot to make the Brotherhood a reality. I changed the location of the island because Delos Island is a non-habitable place and it's a restricted archaeological site. And I moved it to Anafi, which is also on the same cluster of islands in the Cyclades. I set up an Indiegogo crowdsourcing page and we were off. Before I show you what it's done so far with the 2 editions, I want to say a few things of how I see the internet evolving through artistic practices. I see an ongoing importance that artists and art practitioners in general, they need to disconnect from their everyday lethargic working methods or this social monotony. There is no better example than Plato's Allegory of the Cave, which is a chapter from his book The Republic, where he speaks in this chapter about the enclosed, the imprisoned subject that should cast his gaze and go out from the cave and forget the shadows of this enclosed reality. So in our era, our cave is our lifestyle, and these like shadows that there were in this cave can be explained with the following examples. There is uninspired research-based work or online networking within a really enclosed, boring, specific interest field, like in my case the artwork, or some remote distance friendship. So we over-communicate for being totally lonely, or we research so much about something without having experiential thinking or questioning. I think art practitioners should forget the city as a habitable environment, at least for a while. We see this ongoing financial global situation or the dominance of neoliberalism tactics. So there is no better reason for this initiative for me to exist, where most of us, we reevaluate everything. At the same time, I really love nature, and it's a challenge to explore it and also to see how other people are working with nature, surrounded by it. I think we should all go back to nature and meet with other people who share the same ideas and work creatively under the same horizon. From this desolated context, the places I choose, it almost feels like getting into another dimension. I think somehow everything looks fresher and different. So in this direct, in IRL experience, we work with different expressions, like visual arts, science, it's poetry, but also health well-being. In former times, I was always also inspired by projects like that happened in the late 60s and 70s, like the Whole Earth Catalog, or more specifically the Italian avant-gardist movement. These guys brought like really impossible but really visionary projects, like few names like here, like Ettore Sochas, or this is a lesser known group called Cavart. And these guys, they opened a new chapter. This chapter was speaking about the dream of technology's dominance. And these guys somehow predicted how we would live now, dominated by technology. And they predicted the internet, basically. But at the same time, they really did really amazing land art projects and working in nature. So this chapter is closed now because, I mean, with technology being dominated around us, we keep these fruits of these like visionary people, and we apply them, we reevaluate, we contemplate them with new ideas towards a critique of the material world, which I think does not exclude the internet anymore too. So now I will show you the two first editions that happened. The first one happened, as I told you, on Anafi Island in Greece, and the other one happened in Las Posas in Mexico. So the first place is Anafi, which is in Greece. It's kind of remote island. It's really beautiful and has this amazing metaphysical landscape. Actually, it's where there is this red arrow is located. And so since the ancient time, it was connected with many mythological legends, and until the Middle Ages, it was inhabited by pirates. So it's really beautiful and has amazing beaches everywhere. So we gathered there about 11 people. I chose a beach and we set up a camping site. And we used the island, the whole island, as an interface and an experiment for our projects. This is the camp. So here, this is a work by Amalia Ullman, who she came to Anafi, and while she stopped briefly in Santorini, she found these webcams, the public webcams on the island, and somebody took photos of her while she was like hanging out in front of them. When she came to the island, she did different workshops like this one, which is like bracelet making. We did the bracelet of pigs, which is an acronym for Portugal, Italy, Greece, and Spain. This is a work by Harry Burke. Harry is a poet and a writer, and poet came to Anafi, and during his residency, he wrote poetry. So one night before he left the island, he recited his poetry in one of the bars. And the audience was us, and of course, you know, people who happened to be on the bar. This is a work by Priscilla Tea. She's Italian, and actually Priscilla, she was projecting still images of her paintings. She's a painter actually, and she was projecting them on the moving surface of the sea, and it could feel a little bit like animated GIFs every night. This is a performance by Vincent Charbois. He's a French-Canadian, and he came to the island and he did this 1-minute performance called the Eternal Headstand. Actually, where we camped, it's also a nudist beach. So he made this performance. While Vincent was doing his performance, artist Miltos Manetas was shooting a video of him. He was shooting a video with his BlackBerry about making an invisible painting of the outlines of his body. For the Brotherhood, for the first 2 editions, I also accepted like remote contributions from people who could not make it, but also some other people who canceled last minute, because this is a self-funded project. So this is a piece by Anthony Antonellis. He like asked about some, situations there, and he did this work called Simulation of a Feeling. Andreas Angelidakis is an architect and an artist, and he was making every night iPad screenings of really, really underground retrofuturistic films. And we had also Junkjet magazine. It's a magazine about online culture, and their makers, they came to Anafi, Ashley and Mona, and they did some beach kit stuff like this cursor frisbee. And we also had writers like Rosa Farkas, whom she wrote a text about the Brotherhood and her views about combining with philosophy and neoliberalism. These are few of the projects we did from the first edition. The second edition happened in Las Posas, which is a really, really amazing place, 8 hours away from Mexico City, and it's located on a mountain in a rainforest, and it's actually 8 hours away north from Mexico City, and you can only get there with a bus with a very dangerous street. So there, in the late 40s, there was a British aristocrat who bought a piece of land, and he was a little bit of an artist, a poet, but also involved with the surrealist art movement. And there he built these amazing Gothic architectural dystopic structures out of concrete. And there is this vast area he has, and this is the structures how they are now. And the nature actually is eating them. The nature is really amazing because the park has these beautiful lagoons and rivers. So luckily we camped next to the park where there is this new age kind of Indian tents. We were about 15 of us, and every day we were making a plan of how things will happen, how we will evolve, and both we were doing daily and nightly activities. So this is a project by Mike Weda and Mike Calvert. Actually, it's a performance. Mai is Japanese, Mike is American, and they did their wedding. They made a modification of a Japanese ritual, and they made their wedding called the tea ceremony wedding in one of the structures. Anastasios Logothetis is a Stockholm-based artist. He was like offering massage sessions, and he was making this podcast also, and he was choosing different places inside the park where he could, make this. Actually, this is me here. And we had also remote contributions like the Swiss Hans-Ulrich Obrist. That was an Instagram contribution, and he actually asked me what was the day of conception of the Brotherhood, and he made this numerology diagram. That's a projection of my website. It's called monumenttosomething.com in one of the mazes of Las Posas. This is The Sacrifice by Joe Hamilton. Joe is an Australian artist, and he asked that we all discard our technology for a few hours and we make some sort of like sacrifice, and it became like a really weird sculpture at the end. Artist Petra Courtright, she was making projections of her pieces, and at some point she put out the software she is using for her projects, and we were all actually passed from her computer, and we did some sort of a Petra style works. Again, this is Vincent Chalbois. He chose a cave for his performance, the Eternal Headstand. And of course we had the remote contributions like this one by Michael Manning from LA, which is called This Is Not a Place. Basically when we are there, the remote we send like material to contributors who participate remotely, and they make some sort of a remote residency. And this is a work by Manuel Fernandez from Madrid. His work was Ruins. And this is a work by Brenna Murphy, and she actually saw things on Google Earth about this, and then she sent us these beautiful images. At the same time, I'm really interested to have also impromptu participations. So when we were at Las Posas, we had this really nice guy called Daniel Edexman. He was actually traveling with his trailer from Argentina all the way to the Northern American. So he was staying accidentally at the same camp where we were. So when he heard about us, he proposed me to do like an astronomy workshop that he had these amazing binoculars, really professional. And one night we were all gathered and we made this astronomy workshop, and we saw like really amazing planets. I saw, for example, Saturn, like it was really like looking an animated GIF. It was blinking like an animated GIF, but I could not capture on my camera because the lenses, it's impossible. So it stayed in my mind really as a very momentary, beautiful moment. The next Eternal Internet Brotherhood will happen the first 10 days of April, and it will happen in the Dead Sea of Israel, Palestine, and maybe Jordan. We will stay in a kibbutz in Gen AD area, and we will start going around the neighborhood. This time I'm thinking I will only restrict only to physical contribution, and it will be more intimate. And because this place has really, although it's very conflicted place, I know, it has this very therapeutic and really energetic pranic powers that it's really important to be physically there. So yeah, that will happen in the April, as I said. The Eternal Internet Brotherhood is really a self-funded and independent project. It's really, it does not rely on any art institution or any entity. It's actually self-funded. I'm trying to find money from different sources, from people I know, from strangers on Facebook, and I pay some part of the expenses of the participants. So donations are welcomed. So I want to conclude my speech, and I want to say that there is a growing interest for this project from different parts of the world, and actually many different disciplines, which is interesting for me. It's not restricted only to arts. So under the new schemes on internet governance and this like corporate tendency that the internet has now, it's sad to see also some countries trying to censor it or imposing these, crazy laws. For me, the Eternal Internet Brotherhood is a tool to bypass these dark networks and meet open sourcely with people and places. I would call this as a physical browsing to discover more humanistic ethnological aspects of contemporary life, especially to places, remote places, peripheries, not metropolitan places. Actually, we go on the opposite where the art world is going. So it's really great to see the cultural traces of the internet and how they will act as an ideological guidance in these places. I think the internet should always be our unresistible brother. Thank you.